Growing up as a teenager, I often familiarized myself with the names of the players in probably one of the greatest sports of all times. Jordan, Pippen, Rodman, Malone, Stockton, Hathaway, O'Neal, Johnson, Bryant, Barkley, Miller, Kidd, and Payton were my all-time favorites. These days, as a lawyer, the names of NBA I've familiarized myself with are somewhat more complicated. I am referring to non-binding agreements, of course. To encourage us to make more videos like this, please like, share, and subscribe. We will really appreciate it. Thank you. So what are non-binding agreements? Are they an oxymoron? Or are they a myth? If they aren't binding, what's the point of agreeing to them? A non-binding agreement, as the name suggests, is an agreement where the parties are not obligated to perform. There are two types of non-binding agreements. The first type is where the parties intended it to be binding, but because of certain circumstances, it no longer is. These circumstances includes force majeure, doctrine of frustration, uncertainty in contracts, illegality, impossibility, misrepresentation, mistakes, fraud, undue influence, one party's legal incapacity to enter a contract, lack of consideration, and so on. For videos regarding the discussion of some of these circumstances, we'll share a link here below. Today's video is focused on the second type of NBA. The second type of NBA is where the parties intended it to be non-binding at the outset. You probably recognize them by their names. Example, letter of intent, memorandum of understanding, term sheets, or even conditional offer. It doesn't really matter what it's named. What's important is the substance in the agreement. If the parties intended the arrangement to be binding on them, you can call it a friendly unicorn proposal. For all I care, it is still binding on the parties. Non-binding agreements exist for many reasons. It can be used to set out the intentions of the parties when they have yet to put in place a complete structure of a deal, or when there are complex transactions involved, the parties can set out the terms as a guide to further negotiate or improve on it, or it can also be used to indicate an agreement to agree if certain conditions or milestones are met, or when time is of the essence, one can use it to formalize the relationship before a comprehensive contract is signed. For example, in the NBA, I'm referring to the National Basketball Association here, of course, teams may negotiate deals with free agents during the free agency moratorium period. In professional sports, a free agent is a player who is eligible to sign freely with any clubs or franchise, whereas a free agency moratorium period is a negotiation period where the team may not sign agreements or make trades. Any deals struck during the moratorium period are characterized as agreements but are not binding for the players or the teams. Either side can back out in this situation. This is what happened in 2015 when DeAndre Jordan reneged on his verbal agreement with the Dallas Mavericks to instead re-sign with the then incumbent LA Clippers. The bottom line is, non-binding agreements are tools to a means. It is something one uses to help the parties form a binding contract. A non-binding agreement becomes binding either with a new agreement stating that it is binding to supplement the existing NBA, or by conduct of the parties in providing consideration to the NBA. Consideration is simply the exchange of something of value for the parties. For example, if I say I'll draft a will for free for the first 100 people who subscribe to this channel, the act of clicking that subscribe button in exchange for the will is the consideration. A non-binding agreement can be complicated at times, especially on the subject on binding promises. Sometimes you might even have an NBA that is partially binding on the parties. As mentioned earlier, what is important is the substance in the agreement. Hence, it is always important to read every line in the agreement and what is in between them. If you can't decipher it, it's always a good idea to consult a lawyer. So, which is your favorite NBA? I'm talking about the players here, of course.